The Feed.
Amazon is breaking up the operations of its Wondery podcast network, and we get into it. Working with AI to help with your podcast and keeping it human. Rebranding your podcast, what to do before you change the name. Plus, we're headed to Podcast Movement in Dallas. Hello, I am Elsie Escobar, Director of Community and Content for Libsyn, and this is episode 299 of The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast, the podcast that takes it beyond how to podcast into keeping you podcasting with podcasting tips and information for the everyday podcaster and taking you inside Libsyn. Now, if you are starting a podcast or simply looking to find a new home for your podcast, use the code THEFEED, all one word, to get a month free. Now, if you would like to get featured on the show, send in your 30-second promo for your show or for an episode. How do you do it? You attach it to an email and you send it to thefeed@libsyn.com. If you don't have a promo, but you want your voice on the show, ask us a question or add to the conversation that you hear on an episode, send us voice feedback. You can call us at 412-573-1934, or you can use SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/thefeed. Everything is done via email. It is first come, first served, unless we run out of time or get sidetracked or save it for a future plot twist. I don't know. And now on to our main conversation with our special guest co-host, Brian Coddington, right after the first promo of the episode from Video Fuzzy.
Hiya, I'm Terry J. Alman, host of Video Fuzzy The Soundtrack. In episode 14, Osito, I take a world music focus interviewing Guadalajaran artist and DJ Benjamin Cole about his wonderful creative energy.
Everything's possible.
Also, my best friend from high school, Jason Lund, talks to me about Kiss, and I explore the music of Kashtin, Kukuruza, Kate Bush, Kesha, Kansas Falco, Shakira, Los Ketchup, K7, Katie Lane, Katie Tunstall, Kim Ritchie, Kim Wilde, Carla DeVito, and Korn. For all this and more, please add, follow, and subscribe to Video Fuzzy The Soundtrack, wherever you get your podcasts. Happy listening.
Hello, Brian.
Good generic time of the day, Elsie. I'm clearly not Rob.
Woohoo! We have a guest, y'all. Listen, Rob is on vacay. Rob is on vacay.
Got to get the other bald person in Libsyn to come
in the house. This is so exciting. So you've never co-hosted the feed with me.
I have not, and like I mentioned to you this before we started recording, so it's kind of surreal to me because I still actively listen to the feed. I listened to the feed before I started working at Libsyn and still listen to it even while working there, and now it's come full circle that I'm on the feed, so it'll be very funny. Hi, future Brian, who's listening to this in the car. You were on the feed, remember?
Yay. All right, how exciting. That is so super cool. I think we have a pretty jam-packed episode that we kind of really do need to cover a lot of the information on this episode, so we're going to get to it right away. And we would be amiss if we didn't address, I guess, the bigger or the biggest news that seemed to be going around and within the podcasting space, I think, at least for me, where I couldn't turn around without having so many people commenting, so many very quick hot takes and think pieces. And anyway, this is all about the Wondery Podcast Network no longer being, I guess, Wondery as it was, essentially. It's like the demise of Wondery and how sad that is and all kinds of stuff. So we are kind of going to get a little bit into that. And have you heard some of these news, Brian? Or
I mean, when the news broke, it was so bizarro just because, like, you had this break on Bloomberg, and then immediately after there was another article that said, no, ignore that. That's not the case. So it was just, this whole scenario was just so weird, in my opinion.
Actually, because I did see that, right? And I have thoughts about that because it's basically the same thing. They said the same thing. It's all about positioning. So for me watching this play out, you could see the PR companies and the messaging that people and those big companies trying to get the right message out and how it was positioned. And that's not the way that we wanted it. And it has to be like this very clean way of saying things, and language is supposed to be in this way. It was a whole thing. But alas, let's go ahead and start with the Bloomberg article. And I am going to read from it. There's a link. Actually, you guys, there's going to be a link to everything, and all of the articles that I'm going to mention are going to be in the show notes. So you are welcome to, check all this stuff out. And the reason I'm going to read a lot of this is because of all of the coverage that this has been getting and all of the hot takes that have been shared. What is it called, Brian, when you immediately have a comment when you don't have the full information?
Knee-jerk reaction.
Knee-jerk reaction. That's it. I was like, I knew that. There's so much of that where people are reading the knee-jerk reactions and missing the big picture of it and what the actual announcement was. And so I'm trying to just explain it from a different perspective. But we're going to read the source material in order to do this. How about that?
That sounds good.
That sounds good. Okay.
It's very dense stuff.
So Amazon, this is from Bloomberg. Quote, Amazon is breaking up the operations of its Wondery podcast network as part of a broad reorganization of the business, according to a person familiar with the plans. About 110 people will lose their jobs, and Wondery Chief Executive Officer Jen Sargent will exit the company, with existing Wondery series to be moved under Amazon's Audible banner or become part of the company's new creator services team. Steve Boom, Vice President of Audio, Twitch and Games, wrote in a memo that, quote, the podcast landscape has evolved significantly over the past few years, end quote, and that the moves are designed to better align teams and deliver the best experience to creators, customers, and advertisers. So I want you guys to start thinking about that, because this is why they're doing what they're doing for. In addition, this is continuing with the article, Wondery Chief Executive Officer Jen Sargent will exit the company, according to a memo to staff viewed by Bloomberg News. Existing Wondery series will either be moved under Amazon's Audible banner or become part of the company's new creator services team, which will become home to personality-driven shows, including Jason and Travis Kelce's podcast. The Wondery brand will still exist on some of these creator services run shows. The moves are an acknowledgement that Amazon's big push into podcasts hasn't worked out as planned. Now that, to me, Brian, feels that's a little bit editorialized.
Tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit.
Just smidge.
Because it seems a very clear point of view. Anyway, here we go. Continuing on, quote, despite signing up some of the biggest names in the business, the online retailer is shifting strategies to compete better with platforms like Spotify Technology SA and Alphabet Inc.'s YouTube as podcasts shift to video formats from audio only. Quote, and this is a same quote from earlier, the podcast landscape has evolved significantly over the past few years, end quote. Steve Boom, Vice President of Audio, Twitch and Games, wrote in the memo, quote, the rise of video has also blurred the lines of what it means to be a podcast creator, end quote. The Wondery Plus team, because I want to call attention to this too, Brian. The Wondery is one thing. Wondery Plus is another thing, because that's the people who are dealing with the premium subscription layer and app from Wondery. The Wondery Plus team will now report into Audible, the memo states. Wondery's narrative-driven studio, which creates shows including the Dr. Death series, will merge with Audible, and Wondery Chief Content Officer Marshall Louis will join Audible in a new role. Meanwhile, Wondery's tentpole shows with major talent such as Dax Shepard will start working with a creator service team, a move designed in part to do a better job on selling large sponsorships and integrations across the Amazon platform. The company has created a blueprint of sorts with LeBron James, who hosts a podcast, Mind the Game, and has worked as a Prime Day spokesperson, a role in which he promotes his line of male grooming products. Wondery's advertising and sponsorship organization will form a new team that handles similar deals across Amazon Music and the creator-led programs. The Wondery Plus app will continue to exist for the foreseeable future, said the person who asked not to be identified discussing non-public information. Quote, these changes will not only better align our teams as they work to take advantage of the strategic opportunities ahead, but even more crucially, will ensure we have the right structure in place to deliver the very best experience to creators, customers, and advertisers. All right, Brian, what's your take at this point?
At this point, this sounds to me like consolidation. That is what this sounds to me like. It sounds like Amazon has a lot of silos when it comes to audio and podcasting, right? And what this sounds like to me is to reduce costs. It makes better sense to combine those silos into one. And if they are seeing that audio, and especially their podcast rollout, has not been what they've liked, which, let's be honest here, I don't know how many people listen to podcasts on Amazon Music, but I don't think it's as much as people are listening to it on, say, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or even watching them on YouTube. So yeah, it has not rolled out as much as they'd like. So yeah, they're trying to reduce costs. So they've combined Wondery. It's not that Wondery's going away, which I think is what the knee-jerk reaction was, right? Like everyone's like, oh no, Wondery's disappearing. It sounds like consolidation, and it sounds like they're trying to focus more on those marquee creator-led shows and trying to get visibility for those marquee creative-led shows to sponsors. And that's the focus. Why? It's generating more revenue for them.
Yeah, it makes sense. And yes, so let's continue on, because I feel that you're on the right track here, for sure.
Yeah.
So now from TechCrunch, which was published almost right after the Bloomberg one was, and TechCrunch starts that article, or at least the chunk that I gathered here, with this, quote, Amazon is denying that it's shutting down Wondery, the podcast studio it acquired in late 2020, after Bloomberg reported on Monday that the company was closing the studio and cutting 110 jobs. Amazon told TechCrunch that Wondery will continue to develop creator-led podcasts under the Wondery brand within a new team. What's changing is the company it's separating the teams that oversee Wondery's narrative podcast efforts from those developing its creator-led shows. Wondery is combining its narrative podcast studio, which includes podcasts like Dr. Death and American Scandal, with Audible. The podcast landscape has evolved significantly in the past few years, particularly with the rise of video-forward creator-led content, Amazon said in an emailed statement. Quote, these changes reflect that evolution and will streamline how Wondery integrates further into Amazon. By making these changes, we can better support creators in monetizing their content across multiple channels, help them expand their brand IP, and simplify the process for advertisers while making content more accessible to audiences wherever they prefer to consume it. This evolution builds on Wondery's early success with video-forward shows and positions us to better serve creators, customers, and advertisers. You hear those three audiences over and over that they mention: creators, customers, and advertisers. And so that framework of serving those three distinct areas and making a lot of these choices to serve these independently, I think does have a lot to do with that restructuring, right? That we were talking about before, the consolidation of all their stuff, but they also have to think, okay, this is who we're serving. So that's from TechCrunch. Again, all of the links are going to be in the show notes here. There was another source, and I did not actually write all the stuff in here. This one has a little bit of a different take. It's on Variety, and it has a little more storytelling. It feels to me that there was a lot more time that was invested, or at least the way in which the Variety article was written. It's less newsy, right? And commenty, industry-y. It has a little bit more story. It's very vibey for Variety. I enjoyed reading that one. I do not have quotes from that one in there, but one of the thing that I really kind of liked is the first sentence of this article starts like this. Quote, In a crowded market, stars shine brightest, end quote. And I think that actually encapsulates what this whole thing was about. And so here's a little bit more on my take, because I kind of sat with this for a long time, because the takes that I was hearing were really focused on the loss of Wondery, which I think as a brand is very meaningful to a lot of people. Did you ever get into any of the Wondery shows?
I got into, like, I guess the remakes of those shows that happened after the fact. So like Dr. Death and a lot of those then were made into TV shows and that sort of thing. So I got into them after the fact, but I never was really into the Wondery shows. It's just not what I tend to listen to when I'm listening to podcasts.
For sure. Like, I'm not necessarily one that is super into these shows, but I did happen to get into Dr. Death, and I really enjoyed that. I loved that. I was kind of a little bit on the obsessed side. And then in She Podcasts, when we were recording She Podcasts, we got asked to do, weirdly, because we're going to be talking about this later, we did a little bit of a special episode / feed drop on our feed for pay, where we did a little bit of a push for the podcast called Dying for Sex. And I remember when this podcast first came out, and I had heard about Dying for Sex being, released. It's not particularly a show, given that title, that I was like, I don't know if I want to listen. Like, it's just, it didn't even resonate with me. And I think, I can't remember if it was a feed drop or if it was, I actually had a conversation with Hernan Lopez, who at that time was leading Wondery. And I remember having a conversation with him about Dying for Sex specifically. Like, that's why he called. And he said, I really believe in this show. You should listen to it. And I was like, all right. And I did. And I was floored by the show. I binge listened to it when I could, and I ended up in I distinctly remember sitting on my bed and crying.
Wow.
Because I thought it was so beautiful. And I talked about it on She Podcast. Genuinely, I'm talking about it now. It really struck me. So that's my memories of Wondery. So I think for all of us, there's at some point that the meaningful nature of the work that they put out was really important.
I think the thing too is just like the types of shows that they were creating. I don't think they translate well into the current crop of quote unquote popular podcasts you see, where they are kind of, talking head style stuff. That's, I think, part of the issue there is like they were doing really heavily researched and building story centered shows that had a reaction, like you just said, where they really like pulled at your heart 100%, or just they were so bingeable. So, I mean, I think that's part of it is how do you turn that into, say, a YouTube centric or video centric?
Oh, you can't. And that's what I think is a big thing. And I understand why they're splitting this up. So because they did mention that one of the things that they figured out is that shows like Dying for Sex or Dr. Death, who are in this narrative series, if you are going to make money off of those shows and or monetize them in some way, there's a different type of a monetization model than shows like the Kelsey Brothers show, right? And like because that has a different type of model for making money that is different, and vice versa, right? Because like Dying for Sex and Dr. Death have both been made into film / video type situations for streaming content, which is you can't do that with the Kelsey Brothers.
No.
You could put the Kelsey Brothers show as is on, let's say, Amazon Prime, as is, as in like we can watch it on Amazon Prime. But Dying for Sex was developed into a very specific type of output for with actors and story and script and repurposing, and it was a whole other thing. Dr. Death, same thing. So those are two separate types deals. The IP around those is different. You don't know how much anybody owns or whatever. And I think it's a little bit more challenging for shows such as the Wondery narrative shows to have the advertising happen within them in a way that isn't too disruptive to the story. Because I very distinctly remember that the advertising, was it advertising? I just thought like they're doing a really good job at not disrupting the narrative and the consumption of this specific podcast, the Dying for Sex one, where it took me out of the story because it was so emotional. Like it seemed weird to have an ad in the middle of talking about this woman, spoilers, who is literally dying. And there's some very, very emotional things happening in that story. Mm-hmm. To have like a random ad programmatically inserted in something would be disruptive.
Yeah, I don't think, an ad for Harry's Razors is going to
No.
That. I don't see that working out well.
Oh my God. Brian. Oh my God. Yeah, that would not go well at all. So I can see that. I totally understand that concept there. But I kind of want to, before we wrap up this conversation, I want to talk about this from the perspective of the business, not so much our hearts. Because there was like a lot of that knee-jerk reaction was very emotional around like what I was talking about, the Wondery brand, the meaning that a lot of these shows put out as if they were being discounted and like those shows don't have any value and oh gosh, audio is dying sort of thing, because that's a very emotional thing for sure. But here's how I viewed this entire thing. And part of it is that it's directly from business, right? So for a lot of the way that the creator-led, because that was the key thing here, creator-led shows, which are, right, the Kelsey brothers and all of the rest of the stuff, talking head things.
It's personalities,
influencers, the people that they invested in millions of dollars to have come in. This is an entry point for these people. And their podcast, their show is an entry point. It's not the end point. And so those big businesses and those big names that happen to be investing time in their show, because there's a lot of people who have come in, big names who have come in who thought like, oh, podcasting, I just record. And magically all things happen. And they realize that it's hard. It takes work. You have to invest a lot of you in it. And a lot of folks aren't willing to do that and end up pod fading very, very fast. And then chalk it off to that podcasting thing didn't work, but they just came in it, with a weird point of view. But alas, those people who are coming in, who are really committed, it's more of an on-ramp for them. And Amazon is clarifying for itself how to make the most money out of these creators and turn them into an entire ecosystem of making money for them. So it's like a win-win for everybody. So the show itself is really just one product. The person, those guys, the Kelsey brothers, I'm just using them just because the Kelsey brothers are the business. So that's the connective tissue. Amazon is using that connective tissue to sell other things. And that means their merch, their endorsements, the events that they might be doing, the tie-ins that they have with the show itself, and expanding the capacity of that to everything that they own, because they already own so many verticals of all of these different things already. They have an avenue for them to sell them with everything else that Amazon is and has. They're learning from the way that now we get attached to a lot of the personalities in there. I don't know if you knew about... Did you ever watch the Risa Tisa?
No.
Who the F Did I Marry? It's a 50-part like TikTok series that everybody was talking about. Dude, you have to like watch it at some point. I'm not a TikTok person. I don't use TikTok.
I am now.
Oh,
I kind of, because I was using TikTok to promote my own podcast.
Right. That's right.
I slowly started to turn into a person who consumes a large amount of media over TikTok. I'm ashamed Well, I want to hand in my elder millennial like hat
Yeah.
to people, because us elder millennials, like, we aren't into TikTok so much. We're like, where is this tick of talk thing? But I've gotten into it, and I consume a lot of it now. But no, I have not seen that one.
It's really long because you have
Really?
to sit there and like, TikTok isn't necessarily one where you follow a series for 50. But I did, because her storytelling was amazing. And the story just
Really?
keeps getting better, like deeper and richer. Anyway, so many people started to know who Risa Tiso was. And everybody was obsessed with this 50-part series that she put in there because the story was so strong and she was so great. And this went through pop culture, everybody started to know who she was. And she ended up, I think that they signed her story. Like, it was crazy. Within one day, she's a regular person, by the way. She wasn't trying to do it. She just started to do the thing. So all this to say that when you watch the cultural shift from somebody who has a good story and or a good vibe, something happening with them, they can literally overnight start to get exclusive ad deals, have the merch, the product lines, all that. Why? Because of the reach and the audience that they're having. And it's that influence when people say like, hey, you need to use this one thing, where companies can see this is working. This is getting eyes on my stuff. This is selling product. This is moving it forward. So everybody's making money. And things like narrative podcast audio shows don't have that kind of instant gratification for the brands to make money right now, because that exposure from these people can, and it has been proven to push product forward. It happens. Like, I say it on a podcast, somebody goes and buys it.
It's funny that this story broke, and it's funny that we're having this conversation. I encountered this very same phenomena recently. I got invited to a press screener for a film, because some people know I make a movie podcast, and it was for a film called House of Eden, and it was hosted by Shudder, and the directors behind it were TikTokers. Call Me Chris and Selena Spooky Boo, who I had never heard of before. But when I was talking to the person who was organizing it, they were like, oh yeah, they made this movie and they got 6 days into shooting it, and Shudder called them up and was like, we're going to buy your movie. And I realized why. It's because their reach on their TikTok, that influence, was so massive that Shudder is looking at it going like, well, this is a no-brainer in terms of being able to sell more subscriptions to Shudder, being able to tap into, in essence, what is free marketing, right? Because you've got those influencers already. So long story short, the movie wasn't that great, but it was the influence. It was those people. You were not buying the movie. You were buying those people's connection with people. And that's, in essence, what's happening right now with Wondery and Amazon.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of what we have to pay attention to. That, to me, that whole creator services thing that they're talking about with, that Amazon is doing, that specific thing, is brand management plus talent agency, if you think about it that way, right? So they're being matchmakers to make the money off of like the people that you're talking about, right? Let's say to be the middle person who negotiates that deal between that movie, whatever that, like the Shudder and the TikTok creators, if you will, and being able to then go like, okay, how do we make, what's the merch like for this kind of stuff? Like, how do we capitalize on this fame, on this reach at this moment to make the fastest amount of money? And again, they have the verticals to be able to offer that, right? So that's why they're pushing that kind of stuff, to be able to move it across music, their video, Twitch, Amazon Lives, like all of those things. So to me, this is not a story of video versus audio in podcasting. It's a fundamental shift of the creator economy evolving, because that's really what it is. The way that Amazon is positioning itself is that they're not just a distribution platform, as in like just where you get your podcast. They're a brand builder. And guess who's the asset? The creator, right?
Yeah.
That person, the creator, the one that you see. And of course, everyone loves being able to scale. And given their own goals, as in like Amazon, right? Which of course is more money, is that audio alone, just the audio, is not fast enough to make that money that I'm talking about, like the capitalizing on the popularity of what happens. Because the other thing too, though, Brian, is talking about your example with the Shudder film that you just watched. That fame, given what's happening right now, is literally like, it could be weeks.
Oh, yeah. No, it could be gone instantly.
Yeah.
Like, or just in 6 months.
In 6 months, yeah. And now they've moved on to something else, but they made the cash right there. And it matters to obviously the creators because they're maybe no longer next year, maybe no longer making as much money as they were that first part, right? Maybe they don't sell another movie. But for the person who's in the middle, who is that talent agent, brand negotiator person, they are making the money because they know that this is where the money is. So they understand what that is. And that's what's happening with, like, we see it with everywhere, with the Sydney Sweeney thing that's happening right now with American Eagle. But all in all, the mess that is happening is making money.
People are talking about it.
People are talking about it.
That's the thing. People are talking about it.
And
if people are talking about it, if anyone's talking about something, you can make $1 off of it.
Absolutely.
Like, that's how it works.
That's how it works. And the thing is that the brand itself is making money. American Eagle is making money. It's selling jeans. The stock is up. It's the personality. Will this go away for Sydney Sweeney? Probably. But the reach that's happening at this point is the thing that they're really doing it. Anyway, so to me, I don't think it's about podcasting. I don't think it's audio versus video. I think that it's that personality thing that's changing right now. They're monetizing audiences in different ways. Them focusing just on downloads and or thinking just of the audio piece. It's leaving a lot of money on the table. So they're expanding that ecosystem. They have the way in which to really serve this. And they really called it out. Serving the creator-focused people who are trying to negotiate deals like the one that you were talking about, the Shudder movie, those folks need different resources than somebody who is creating a narrative audio-only story. It's just a different need. We have to understand what the difference thing is.
I think it's also worth just thinking, as podcasters are being diversified in what they can, get how to build out themselves. I think it's worth just noting that podcasters have to start thinking of themselves like a brand.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it can't just be like, oh, I'm a podcaster and I just do a podcast. That doesn't work anymore. Like, as you mentioned, like this world has changed a bit. I think podcasts naturally think of themselves as a brand over time, especially if you're in this in the long haul. But like, you really have to have that mindset of, okay, am I doing TikTok? If that's going to be the case, what's the brand identity going to be for TikTok? What's the brand identity going to be for YouTube? What is it going to be for Instagram? You have to think that way, because that's where, if you're in this for money, that's where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be, I make a podcast and period, done. That's it.
Yep. You're totally right. I think that that's a wonderful segue for us to kind of move out of this whole thing and address it in a way that really affects y'all who are listening to this going, this is industry stuff, this is business stuff. Does it really matter to me? Sometimes it feels scary when you see these big moves because, again, the emotion that is so much attached to that. But in the reality is a lot of these business things don't actually affect you. It just doesn't. You're just going to keep on doing your podcast. That said, though, where it does affect you for the everyday podcaster, you do have to think exactly what Brian was saying here, which is change is happening. Things are evolving. And then when change happens and things evolve, you also have to think about that and make choices that are good for you. The other thing is the restructuring and the repositioning and the realigning is a natural extension of that evolution. And we all go through this. I'm not saying because the podcasting industry is doing this. No. Think about it from your own perspective, why you started podcasting, what your show means to you, how your life has changed in the past X amount of years since you've been podcasting, how your values have changed, how your time has changed, or all of those things. That is natural extension. And then after you do sort of that thinking, realigning, it gives you a little bit of clarity to take action, to do things another way. So for the rest of us that are in the trenches, we're going to talk about these like things that we are dealing with that actually Brian and I are going to be talking about here. I'll be a little bit talking about over the rebrand of it all. And you're going to be talking about some AI stuff that you're getting. By the way, both of these are part of our sessions that we're going to be doing at Podcast Movement coming up here in August. But we wanted to bring a little bit for it to you. So, Brian, you are doing a session called Smarter, Not Harder, AI Tools and Video Tricks That Keep It Real. But you're going to kind of give us a little hint as to what you're doing there.
Yeah. So it's story time. About 6 months ago, I was hearing a lot about AI, and it's been like on the tip of everyone's tongue for, I'd say, going on now. Like, what would you say, Elsie? Like 2.5 years.
Oh my God, yeah.
AI has been like the drumbeat. So I wanted to personally take my toe and dip it into the AI waters, so to speak, mostly for selfish reasons. I make a movie review podcast called The Cinema Psycho Show. I've been doing it for nearly 10 years. And while I have a co-host who brings a lot to the table, it still is mostly led by me. Mm-hmm. So that means that I am the one who is doing the artwork. I am the one who is editing. I am the one who is doing the show notes and social promotion, all that stuff. My co-host brings a lot of the content stuff to the table and just the back and forth discussion. So I looked at AI as a solution to a problem of, hey, I don't want to be burned out. And there are things in podcasting that I dislike doing. There are aspects of it that I dislike doing, like coming up with titles, coming up with descriptions, promotion. I really hate the promotion of my podcast just because it's another thing to do. So I was like, can AI replace some of that pain? And also do it in an authentic way that isn't a robot sounding type deal. And to my surprise, it can. Especially with today's tools. So in 6 months, and I'm still doing this now, but that was kind of my main focus. How I ended it with is that, one, yes, it can do titles, it can do descriptions, it can do promotion, but it also can analyze your downloads to see how your show is performing and what episodes to double down on. It can literally analyze your data and give you actionable solutions. It assisted me in doing a bit of housekeeping that I had wanted to do for a long time, but just didn't have the energy or just forethought to start, and that is redesign my website. So I asked the AI, I'm like, okay, this is what my website looks like now. What things would you suggest? And it gave me actionable solutions and talked me through a lot of just the setup and framing of how everything should be, organized. It gave me mock-ups of what my website would look like. And so this whole experience of using AI as basically a co-producer almost has given me a lot of things to think about. First of all, I hear a lot in the news, especially recently. I think GPT-5 is getting released relatively soon. It may actually be out by the time this episode comes out. I think they're saying like Sunday it comes out. But a lot of people believe that AI is going to displace jobs. It's not just podcasting, but in macro. I tend to agree that that is a possibility. But I do believe that AI, like everything else, is a tool. And intention behind using the tool is important to consider. For instance, I am going to be 40 years old in September. I grew up in the early 2000s with Napster, Kazaa, Morpheus, LimeWire, anyone who's of the age, you all know. We, of course, didn't quote-unquote pirate anything at all. But those technologies existed, right? And we were told that the music industry and the film industry is going to be destroyed by them. I remember seeing article after article after article how, oh my God, the industry is destroyed because of digital distribution. Flash forward 25 years later, and now how do we consume most of our media? How are you consuming this podcast? Through digital distribution. You wouldn't have Spotify. You wouldn't have Netflix. You wouldn't have Amazon Prime if it were not for the technology of the pirates back then. Is that to say that piracy is a good thing? No, it's not. But there's intention involved. You can use technology for nefarious means, or you can use it for altruistic means. And I think that it's not the technology's problem. It's the human's problem. I think AI has a lot of good that it can be used. To give you kind of a little preview of what things I was using ChatGPT, namely the Plus version, because the free version, unfortunately, it is limiting. Yes, there are AI tools out there built for podcasters. I wanted to personally see, though, what could you do with something general? Why? Because I recognize that podcasters are not made of money.
Mm-hmm.
And for every new tool that you buy, that's another monthly expense. So if you're already paying $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus, can you do a lot of the heavy lifting and work of podcast promotion and just general having a podcast co-pilot, basically, using just ChatGPT? And you can. It's not to say that you can't get a lot of play out of those tools, but I think that it's worth just starting with ChatGPT Plus. Some things to note with ChatGPT that kind of worked for me in this execution. One, as I mentioned before, don't use the free version, or if you're going to start, use the free version, but then plan on updating to the paid version. Use your microphone when asking ChatGPT anything, especially because I found, and I'm going to credit this to our mutual friend, Doc Rock, from Ecamm, because he posted a video about this, and this is where I got this idea. I asked ChatGPT to help me write the prompt that then would go into ChatGPT. Why? Because ChatGPT likes certain things in a specific way. So just having that conversation with the AI can yield better results. The final piece, and this is the thing I think that is the key element with keeping your AI outputs authentic and not sounding like a robot wrote them, is to always lead with your transcript from your podcast. Because your transcript is going to provide a voice, it's going to provide information, it's going to serve as basically the digital repository of knowledge for your outputs. If you just go in with, hey, my show's about X, Y, and Z, but you don't have a transcript, you're not going to be pleased by any of the things that you get out of AI. It's just not going to work. Outside of that, I did use also some post-production tools. So for you editors out there, or you video people out there, you're going to like this. 3 tools that I would suggest using that are AI-driven are AutoPod, AutoCut, and TimeBolt. Elsie, you've used TimeBolt before,
Yes,
right?
I have. Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
It's amazing. I love TimeBolt.
Love TimeBolt. These tools, what they all have in common is they analyze your audio and then through AI means are able to do something to that video clip or that audio clip. More often than not, it is designed to identify and remove ums, ahs, filler words, and spaces between your audio. So that's really what TimeBolt does. TimeBolt also does a ton of other things. Where podcasting comes into play here is, let's say you're doing a multi-cam shoot or even just recording something like you're on Riverside and you want to cut back and forth between, say, a solo shot and a 2-shot and a solo shot of, say, your guest. To do that manually is a lot of work. And what AutoPod and AutoCut do is they actually will assign audio to a specific quote-unquote camera in your nonlinear editor with literally a click of a button. And this does it almost instantaneously. It will automatically cut your podcast based off of who's talking and give you kind of a very, I wouldn't even call it rough, I would call it a fine cut of your podcast in a matter of seconds. And it's kind of crazy watching this. Like, you'll literally press a button and you'll see the timeline start slicing up before your eyes. And it's really weird as a person who works in video to see that. But like, that's its bread and butter, is that it does that. So if you're doing a video podcast, you're like, man, I got to get this out quickly. Those sort of tools can help. They also could do things like bleep out explicit words. If you are a clean podcast, they can add in B-roll and even, of course, create social clips. So those were definitely helpful. And then just finally going beyond the AI of it all. You know, if you're using ChatGPT and you're putting out an episode, say, once a week, you've got kind of a running list of things that always go out no matter what, right? You might have, say, a blog post, a newsletter, and maybe 4 social posts that you want to put out every single week that your episode drops, okay? And remembering all of the different prompts and what you want can be a little difficult. So that's where something like an AI agent can help. And you might have heard of AI agents. These are basically AIs that are tied to specific actions, okay? So it's got a brain, it's got an AI brain, a GPT brain, but then it does something, okay? And maybe that something is, you know, sending you an email or scheduling something on your calendar. You see a lot, if you go on YouTube and just type in AI agents, you'll see thousands of videos of people using services like N8N or Make.com and building these very complex AI agents. I don't think podcasters have to do that. I think they actually can do a lot with ChatGPT because ChatGPT offers what are known as custom GPTs. And a custom GPT is basically a ChatGPT that you give it instructions, you give it programming. It's not hard to give you outputs on a regular basis. So like I built one and literally said like, hey, I would like you to get a transcript and then immediately give me 5 titles, 5 descriptions, 1 blog post, and 3 or 4 social posts. And it's automated, basically. You give it that input, it gives you those outputs automatically. And you can even tie it in now with Zapier. If you're not familiar with Zapier, it's a really cool automation platform. But you can tie it with Zapier so that, you know, you do that and then boom, it sends you an email with all those outputs. That sort of thing is something that I think can free up podcasters tremendously to focus on what they really want to focus on, which is the content creation part, which is that coming up with the idea, the actual recording part. Because I think that's the thing too, is like I think podcasters feel because of that news that we had talked about at the top of the episode, that they have to do so much. And I think there are tools now that, especially if you are on a budget, you don't have a ton of money to hire a crew of people, that you can just get by with using AI and modifying it to your means to kind of simplify and really, I want to say necessarily grow yourself more than you are, but it can put that perception out there and kind of keep up to pace with your podcast creation.
I totally agree. Everything that Brian's talking about right now, again, I think this goes back to talking about what we were just talking about before. Things are changing. Things are evolving. You have to restructure. You have to reposition. You have to realign. And then that helps you create that action. And part of it is that tools like this sometimes can facilitate you being better at being yourself versus thinking it's going to take things away from you.
Yeah. And again, as long as you are leading it with a transcript, because that's the authentic you, that's your voice. So as long as you're leading with that, and then of course, just looking at the outputs and modifying it, that's all that it boils down to. You know, I think a lot of people think like, oh, well, the AI spit this out, I'm going to copy paste it. No, you still are going to want to adjust it because the AI is not 100%. It gets you, I'd say, about 90% of the way there. And when you add in a transcript, I'd say it gets you about 95% of the way there. Mm-hmm. But that extra 5% matters. And that is you. That's using your brain power to look at the outputs and alter it based off of your understanding of your audience and what they want to listen to and what they want to read.
And to your point that you were talking about paying for another thing or paying for another thing, I think that the multifaceted nature of something like ChatGPT where you can do a lot of it, like we keep thinking that we need to have very specific platforms for things. And I think that for some people, that might be the easiest. If you only need that one thing and you really want to create something that is very specific, like there are a lot of AI specific podcasting platforms that might be exactly what you need because they're so centered on the podcast itself. But a lot of these generalist sort of AI agents and or platforms or LLMs, you can use them for a variety of different things. And it's that nature that gives them the power to be able to do it. Like I just introduced my mom to Notebook LM because they hadn't figured out how to use. My mom just bought herself a little baby DVD player because she has all of this family DVDs that she wants to watch our movies and they're not digitized. And, that's a whole thing. And so she got this little small thing and she's like, I haven't even started using it because I can't figure out how to use it. And I said, oh my gosh, we can fix that for you. So I told her to here's the Notebook LM. Let's go ahead. I showed her. All you have to do is go into online and you have to search for the title of your device, what model it is, and instructions or PDF or something like that. You'll find it because it's in there. Then you download that and you upload it over to Notebook LM. And then you ask it and you create a notebook for that thing just with the instructions and you ask it all the questions. Don't ever think that you're being dumb or this is a stupid question. Just say talk to me like I'm 10. And what's the first step I need to do to set up my thing? You don't even have to be clear. And it spits out step by step. And I don't understand step 2. And it'll tell you exactly what to do based on the sources that you give it. And if you want to add more sources, you can get a YouTube video, add it to your notebook, and then you can have somebody just teach you how to do it and you don't feel dumb. And it's so great because sometimes that's hard. It's stupid stuff, So that's going to be a great session, you guys. If you guys are at Podcast Movement, you need to do that. You need to go there. I'm going to be doing a session about rebranding your podcast. I'm going to put it a little bit more into a checklist format. And again, going back to what we were talking about before, which is all about the ability to reposition yourself, to understand how things are evolving. I've been seeing that a lot of people are questioning their podcast, questioning if they're still interested in doing it, or feeling like they're getting tired from doing their show. They've changed and they don't know if they want to have the same conversations they want to be having. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people want to rebrand a show. Sometimes it's maybe just a new name, but to me, it feels like there's so much more behind that. There's a lot of people who are kind of burnt out, tired. They don't know if they want to completely pivot. And so I created this sort of framework because I've been working with so many people and I keep asking the same questions and they're teaching me, given their pain points, what it is that they're working through. I feel right now, August actually, if you are looking to reposition yourself, rethink about your work, and because what we ultimately want is to keep you podcasting. We want you to keep you doing this work. We don't want you to go to Podfade. We want you to keep doing it. And sometimes a change, the work that it takes to find the time to do this work is really important. So to me, August is actually a great time to start to think about when you're going to do it. Because my first thing I say is you need to triage. And you triage because I don't believe that you can do and work at the same time. As in do the podcasting. You cannot keep doing things and fix things at the same time. Because I'm sure we have all gone through this where something goes weird in the house, right? I don't know, something needs cleaned. Something gets broken in your house. And there's a point where you have to go, you guys, we have to take Sunday and everybody's going to leave the house and daddy and mommy or parents are going to fix the stuff. Okay. Y'all are going to your grandparents. We got to fix whatever's happening.
And then they ask, why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Why are we doing that?
Why are we leaving?
Or or even the cleanup, right? Maybe the house is getting to a point where you're like, you guys, I cannot even move. It's a mess. You all are going to go to the grandparents' house. We are going to just do a deep clean because you can't do both at the same time. You can't keep living your life when it gets to a point. So I feel triaging is very important for you. All this to say, you guys, this is where you start. You have to put in your schedule a time where you're going to pause. Just pause. And I know that's a little scary for a lot of podcasters when you tell you just pause because you're like, oh my God, but I can't. I've done this every week for the past 5 years and I've never missed Okay, I get it. You're emotionally invested in this, and I'm super proud you're so committed. But take a moment to just think through it. Either stop the frequency. Maybe it's instead of 4 episodes a month, maybe you do 2, or maybe you do 2 new ones, and then the other ones are like re-releases of old stuff. Or maybe you definitely say, I'm going to take a month off, you guys. I'm coming back on, whatever. But plan it now in August for some time towards the end of the year, because you need time to do the deep thinking. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing you do after you put it on your schedule is you think of what that content is going to be, or how you're going to slow it down, how you're going to repurpose it, however you want to figure it out, how you're going to communicate that with your audience. That's your second thing. And the third thing is you have to really think about what goal you want from that space, the time that you're going to pause. So in the example that I was using in terms of cleaning up the house, you have to go, what are the key things that you have to clean in the house in order for the efficiency of the household to move forward more? Is it the bathrooms? Is it the kitchen? Is it the, mud room? Is it whatever? You need to do that. Is it the closets? Or maybe it's all of it. You really want to tackle it all, but you have to be super, super specific. So is it renaming your podcast? Is it your production? Is it your workflow? Is it your budgeting? Are you just trying to stop the bleeding in some ports? I mean, there's people who have come to me saying like, I am investing so much money per episode and I'm not seeing any results. And I'm feeling really overwhelmed. So what's the thing? You got to pause. You got to stop the bleeding. You got to stop it. So that's what I say in terms of starting off the triage. And then after that, I would say during that time frame, when you stopped, after you put it down, this is when you really start to do the deep work. In addition to the goal, you have to think about defining your conversation. What does that look like? That is conducting a content audit of your past year. The published stuff that you've put out, right? Just look at it. Gather all of your private stuff too. The articles that you've saved, the conversations that you really love, the TV shows that you've been really into, the stuff that you don't really share anymore, the things that are like really aligned with who you are right now, but you don't really talk about on your show because it might be different. It might be the same. And then after you gather all of that, you identify themes. And when I say identify themes, after you put all of that stuff in front of you, you highlight 5 to 10 large themes that you see in your work, both public and private, things that energize you, phrases that make you happy, and then start to see where they overlap. At that time, after you see all of those things, then you draft a guiding statement. This is before a name. I'm not saying it's a name, and I'm also not saying this is a podcast, but I am using a podcast here, but it could be my work. So you do it like this. My work or podcast helps, and then you put a target audience. You insert a target audience there, right? So my work or podcast helps, target audience, to, and then another blank statement, achieve a goal or navigate a problem. You add whatever that is that your work does, right? You insert that. And then the last thing is by, and you add your unique perspective or method. So it's kind of like this. My work helps women to have a happy life by my silliness and quirkiness making you smile every day. I don't know. Whatever. Something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be businessy, because I know a lot of you guys are just doing this because you really love it. And if your goal is to entertain either other people or yourself, that is great. But you put that guiding statement down there. Once you do all of that stuff, you put that away. And then lastly, you start to clarify your goals. So what does success look like for you now? And when you write all that stuff down, that means I want you to let go of measuring your success by one metric. Most of us measure it by downloads. What I want you to do is to first begin to audit your content, like what's working, from content release schedule to workflow to budget, identifying one friction point. Then you redefine how you measure your growth, and you choose 3 new metrics that are outside of downloads, not downloads. Anything else that you can measure. and then choose one primary call to action before you start. Meaning, what is the one thing you're going to tell your audience to do? So your rebrand actually comes from that work because you're starting with the why versus the first thing that happens is, should I change the title of my podcast? I don't know if I should just change the content. Should I just, maybe I'm just going to do that. And then you just make a random decision that's not really aligned with who you are anyway. So if you do this work first, you can move it forward. So my session is not about what I just talked about, actually. My session is actually giving you now, after you do all this, the step-by-step of how you rebrand your show tactically, as in like the actual things. Where do you change it? How do you do some research to make sure that, you're very clear about what you're doing, where you put the things, how you what the artwork specs are, where the best places are to be able to change what you need to change. So that is what my show is about.
Great approach to it. I think a lot of people kind of immediately go to the knee-jerk reaction of, my show's not working, oh God, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
And it taking that time, the triage part, and just stopping and just reassessing and looking at, okay, what do I actually want this podcast to do? What are those goals? Is what I'm doing aligning with them? And have those goals changed?
Yeah.
Because that happens too, right? Like, yeah, I've been doing my podcast. April 1st next year will be 10 years.
Congrats, dude.
Thank you. The goals back then, very different from the goals now, because that happens. And if you don't take that moment to just reassess and really think hard about it, you might be measuring against goals that are outdated.
Mm-hmm. And there's defeating too. They feel very defeating because you go like, I'm not getting the same, or I should be in this place. But if you're measuring it with the wrong stick, it's really hard. It's very, very, very challenging. And I don't want you to be in that position. But all that to say, you guys, Brian and I are not the only ones that are presenting stuff over at Podcast Movement. In fact, there's so many of our sessions. These are just some. So in addition to Brian's Smarter, Not Harder, AI tools and video tricks that keep it real, we also have Beyond Uploads, Advanced Libsyn Hacks for Growth and Efficiency that Matthew Passy is going to be presenting. There's also There's Just Not That Into You, and podcast data and what podcast data can tell you. And that is a panel featuring our VP of Marketing, Chris Avello. There's also, Are There Any Silver Bullets for Marketing Your Podcast with our own very own Rob Walsh.
And then we, of course, have Elsie's session, More Than a New Name, your essential checklist for a successful podcast rebrand. Brooke Collins will be handling evolution and impact of micropods. There will also be a session on programmatic podcast ads, how it works and what's next, featuring Stephen Pickens and Kim Hagen. And then, of course, we have Why Smart Brands Are Betting Big on Podcasts, with Scott Hurd and Anthony Savelli. That's going to be a fun one. I like Scott a lot. And then wrapping up kind of our sessions, we have Should You Join a Podcast Network? How to Vet the Deal Before You Sign, featuring Stephen Pearlstein.
I can't wait. That's the one that I want to go to.
That's the one.
I think that's really awesome. But anyway, if you're a Podcast Movement, come and say hi. We're actually going to be, obviously we'll have a booth there, and we're going to be doing this neat thing called the Libsyn Rescue Challenge, which
this would be cool.
It's going to be great. Keep an eye out on social and or the swap card for more details about that stuff, because that times and dates and all that stuff is going to be in that if you're attending Podcast Movement. And we will let you know what happens after, possibly. I'm not sure what episode 300, which Rob and I are possibly recording over there at Podcast Movement. We still have to figure out exactly when and all that stuff. So, but we definitely will have some kind of debrief about all of these things. But the swap card, for those of you who are attending, we're going to have a great time over at Podcast Movement. Don't be strangers, y'all. And now it's that time, since we don't have Rob here, we have no stats, but we are now at Where Have We Been and where are we going? So where have we been? I don't believe I've been anywhere outside of just preparing for Podcast Movement. That's it. Oh, my God.
Elsie hasn't been anywhere.
I haven't been anywhere. But, Brian, you have been places.
I have been places, yes. As I mentioned during this episode, I do a movie review podcast called The Cinema Psycho Show hosted on Libsyn, of course. And I was a guest on a fellow movie review podcast called Dissect That Film. Myself and my co-host John were on an episode about the awesome movie from 1997, Con Air, featuring everyone's favorite actor, Nicolas Cage.
Nice.
Yeah, and on top of that, my own show, we recently put out a bonus episode, which was a review of a little indie film that I got sent called ZombieCon Volume 1.
Neat.
A movie that combines cosplayers with zombies, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. The crew literally reached out to me and said, hey, would you mind reviewing this? And, you know, I looked at my schedule. I'm like, I don't know. It might not be able to work, but it was a rare gem of an indie film that I thought was hilarious. It actually features an SNL alum, Punky Johnson. If you remember them from a couple years ago, they star in it. But it's a movie that took them 10 years to make.
Oh wow!
And $60,000 invested in it. It was nice to be asked to review it.
That's amazing. Well, cool. We're gonna have links in the show notes for those episodes and stuff. So if you guys want to check it out, that would be amazing. And of course, as we talked about, we are going to Podcast Movement in August in Dallas. Woohoo! So this is August, and we'll be there soon. So and this is going out a week ahead. So we can't wait to see you guys. Do reach out to us, especially if you are going to be a Podcast Movement and you hear this episode, go ahead and hit us up to the feed at libsyn.com. Just let us know you're going to be there and whatnot. And just so that I know that you're going to be there. That would be amazing. And again, if you are looking to start a podcast or switch up your podcast home, you can use the code THEFEED for a free month with us. And finally, don't forget to send us your feedback for anything we did or did not mention on this episode, especially our big thoughts about so many different things. You can record that feedback and email it to us at thefeed@libsyn.com, or you can call us at 412-573-1934, or you can use SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/thefeed. All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for co-hosting with me. And who knows? Maybe you'll be back sooner than you know.
It was awesome.
Thank you. Yay, I'm so glad. Woohoo. All right. And I will talk with you in a couple of weeks, everybody. Bye.
See ya.